Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We welcome Ms. Varuna Jani with us today to join us for a very exclusive Power Talk. Thank you so much, Varuna, for joining us and making time for this session and for our students. It's really, really our pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much. Akshara, you take over from here and please take the session forward. You're on mute, Akshara.
Yes. So Varuna D. Jani's bold creations push the boundaries of creativity and technology, igniting a spark in women and empowering them to wear their passions and dreams. Her scene-stealing pieces have the power to transform and elevate everyone to the realms of high fashion and couture. It's not the jewelry that needs to be the showstopper, but the woman. Is the mantra that the world's only adornologist often turns to when putting her creative mind at work. It is why her pieces that pack the trio of depth, dimension, and drama have been worn by sophisticated style connoisseurs like Kareena Kapoor Khan, Shishmita Sen, and Zeenat Aman. Born in the illustrious Popli family who gave India its first taste of creative diamond compositions, featuring unmatched craftsmanship and attention to detail. Varuna today continues this legacy with her brand Varuna D. Jani. The brand is the answer to the latent needs of highly discerning women across the globe who want versatile creations that redefine luxury. Needless to say, the exquisite design house has garnered several high impact global collaborations over the world, from luxury automobile giants like Audi to Indian couturiers like Falguni and Shane Peacock, have all shared a synergy with Varuna's collections on international runways. Accolades and achievements that followed saw Varuna winning several awards. These are a few to name. Women's Super Achiever by Asia Retail Congress 2009, the Brand Leadership Award by Indira Awards for Marketing Excellence 2009, the Best Wedding Jewelry of the Year by Indian Retailer Awards 2009, and the International Achievers Award 2010 and 11 in Business Excellence, awarded in Singapore in June 2011. Now, starting off with the session, we would like to ask you that how did you kickstart with your brand? How did you come up with this?
So first, I think that I would like to thank SP Jain and the entire faculty for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of all the future business mavericks of India. So I think it's thank you very much for giving me this to share all my experiences, my success, my failure. Truth be told, I have never gone to any management school, and I'm a self-taught designer. I have not even gone to any designing school. In fact, in my school days, I was more of a failure. If I would take care of my history, geography, I would fail in science or maths. And languages was not something which I was that good at. So even looking at all my flaws, I would still like to share with all of you, with an open heart, all my experiences, my success, my failures, my learning along this journey, because I feel that's very important that people speak about their failures rather than their success, so that the younger generation is able to learn better. When it comes to the question of how I kickstarted my brand, I think that it's very important. I should begin from where the seed was sowed. So I think I was 8 years of age, and I come from this family lineage, family jeweler, Pople. And I was very fond of my father, and I would like to accompany him to his Zaveri Bazaar showroom, not because I was passionate about designs, but it was more because I wanted to be with my father. But when I was at the store in Zaveri Bazaar, I would sketch designs rather than sketching cartoons. It just came naturally to me. I used to adorn my dolls with beaded jewelry. I used to sit down and spend my time making beaded jewelry to adorn my dolls, though I never realized then that that was what I was made to do. I come from a very conservative Sindhi family. I got engaged when I was 16 years of age, and I got married when I was 18 years. And I relocated to Dubai in 1991. I already had a daughter in the first year of my marriage. I was a complete housewife. But I think that what I really love doing was walking down the streets of Gold Souk. Gold Souk in Dubai is where the Mecca of jewelry is. And the reason to walk down twice a week, I used to make it a point to spend hours and hours walking down the streets of Gold Souk for hours and hours. I used to love looking at jewelry. I used to love analyzing jewelry. I used to keep on turning the jewelry upside down and learn the craftsmanship. I used to buy loads of jewelry because I loved adorning myself. And I used to attend every single exhibition that happened in UAE, because I had the thirst of, and I think the thirst of, seeing innovative designs. I think innovation is something that I loved seeing. I used to admire innovations in every aspect, especially jewelry. And just like a sponge, I started absorbing all the aesthetics because they had designs from international market. And I started storing it in my hard drive, my brain, not knowing then that everything would come handy to me one day. And in my span, so I was in Dubai from 1991 to 2006. And my entire 16 years, I never sat still. Varuna means water. So I think I could not sit still. I kept on learning new skills, and I have done my small courses in cookery, in event management. So I put my hands into everything. And at the same time, I think was a born entrepreneur because I started various businesses in Dubai. Like I started selling costume jewelry. Then I started teaching cooking because I was very good in cooking. I started a restaurant in Dubai, which is still running. I started a catering unit, which is still running again, called All Spice in Dubai. And I did my event management course. Again, I always believe that whatever learning, knowledge is never wasted. And I think if we can spend our time learning new things, it's always going to come of use to you in future life. Because I always believe that, the more the thirst for knowledge is there, the better it is, because that's the only way to keep adapting and keep evolving in life. So I also am very spiritual in my, in my thought process. And I believe that it was like I sow a thought and I reaped an action. I sow an action and I reaped a habit. I sow a habit and I reap my character. And I sowed my character and reaped my destiny. It means whatever in life you desire deeply, somehow the destiny tries to, actually you create your destiny, because that's how you create your destiny. Because whatever are your thoughts are actually going to eventually fall if you stick to it, to where your destiny or where you are destined to go. And in 2006, my father fell ill and he had a number of government issues. And he called me to join him in the family business because he felt that my brother alone could not handle the Poplar Empire. And I was completely excited, completely over the top of the world, because my father, being a conservative father, never wanted to, have daughters working. He always wanted daughters to raise their children, be housewives. But here he was, and I was so fond of my father that for me, this was an opportunity, plus my love for him, where I wanted to come to India to help him out. And I asked my 3 daughters, by then I had 3 daughters, that what would you do if your father needed you the most? And they said, we would go. And that's how I came to India in 2006. When I came to India, design started coming naturally to me. I used to conceptualize the designs, and all the customers who started coming to Poplar were excited because they realized that something new was coming into the store, and they loved the aesthetics that was coming up. And it was very different from what the market was selling, because I had already got exposure with the international market. As I told you, that I used to walk down the streets of Gold Souk. And that's the time I realized that, yes, this is my passion. And I'm actually made to create wonderful, beautiful jewelry. When I came to Poplay, the first thing I did was, Poplay, their name previously was Poplay Gold Plaza. Now, the name actually was not right for the brand because my father's business was primarily the diamond business. So it was very misleading to have Poplay Gold Plaza when your primary business was diamonds. And all the things that I had learned during my event management is what I used to reposition brand Poplay Gold Plaza and created it to be Poplay Eternal, the only one. It's very important that you reposition your brand every 10 to 12 years because times are changing and you need to keep adapting. When the reason to create Varuna Jani brand, now this is a question that you asked me and I felt it was important that I tell you my whole journey as how I actually ventured into jewelry designing. When so in 2006, we realized that Poplay had the biggest infrastructure with coming to the architecture, to coming to the space that we had, which was never existing anywhere in India. And we were catering to a huge mass from 2,000 rupees purchase to 2 CR. So it was very difficult for us to reach a niche target audience without segregating and creating a brand extension. And because I was conceptualizing the design, and if the advertising companies felt that it's very important to have an individual designer name when you sell designer jewelry, we decided that we would start Varuna D. Jani wing, catering to the HNIs with jewelry which was 10 lakhs above on invitation and exclusively made one-of-a-kind pieces. And that's how we started brand Varuna D. Jani. But again, destiny had something else in store for me. And 2008, I had to separate from Poplay and start my own retail store, Varuna D. Jani, in the hub of Bandra. And that's how I kickstarted my brand, Varuna D. Jani.
This was a very inspiring journey. Did you face any difficulties while kickstarting your brand?
Oh, I faced many difficulties, but I think I'm very happy because these difficulties actually made me who I am. 99% of this industry is a male-dominated industry. And in India, I feel it's a very crab mentality. When you're climbing up the ladder, a lot of people are there pulling you down. And I faced a lot of challenges by a lot of competitor brands in my market. To name a few, I started my store in a by lane because I could not afford the huge rents, which was prevailing in the, on the main road. And when I started applying to the BMC to put my name board, at the on the main road so that people knew that I was existing because I didn't have the huge marketing spends to promote my brand at that point of time. And every time that I put a board, I saw the next morning when I would come, there would not be any board. And this kept on happening 3 to 4 times. And I had to actually go and get the police to help me out and get me out of this problem. The second difficulty I faced was, so I had just a limited capital because the money that I had made by having a share in the turnover of the, my father's company, we had bought a house out of that, instead of taking money monetary, my father had gifted me a house and I had sold that house. And I didn't want to, when I started something of my own, I did not want to put my family's life into stake and I did not want to take any earnings from my husband or something that was saved for my children. And I just had that much capital of the house that I sold and I went into a rented house because I needed that capital at that point of time to kickstart the business. I wanted extra capital and I was not able to get loans from any bank because banks never give you money when you needed it the most. And when you have it, you see blanks all flocking all over. So I had to take huge money from outside market at a 20% rate of interest, which was suicidal. And I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my entire business venture. I should have gone small rather than taken outside loans. So I think I would not, definitely never ever do that mistake from my experiences. The another challenge that I faced was the karigars. The karigars were, they were used to a certain way of working, and they were not able to change and adapt to the new new ways of craftsmanship. So even if I would explain to them, they were never thought it to be serious that a woman is going to teach them something. Like, who's she to know everything? Also, they when my design started doing good, they started leaking my designs and selling it to get extra income. So it was a very unorganized retail. Even when it came to jewelry is all about trust and goodwill, and because I had not attached the name Poplate to my name, it was very difficult for me to initially get customers into the store. Also, another difficulty I faced was, it was an unorganized retail, and people were playing with the trust because there was no third party certification, and the quality of diamonds they were selling was VVS, but the price they were selling was not even my cost price. So there was no transparency in the market, and it was very difficult to compete in India, especially when jewelry was still a commodity and design was never given its due. So, I mean, these were some of the difficulties which I faced, and many more. I could continue it till tomorrow. But I think that these are key points which would help all of you to know from my learnings. So these are the difficulties I faced while starting my brand.
So how big of a team did you require while starting off, right from operation to sales to media? Like if you compare when you just started off to right now where you are,
So,
what do you think you could have improved?
No, I don't think. I think that I think the mistake that I made was, I had this, I wanted to be a 1,000 crore company. That was my dream. And sometimes I feel in life we run after what we want to be and forget who we really are. So I was always the person who was about adding value to my customers' life. For me, the pleasure that I got of interacting with the client and giving them jewelry on the basis of their personality and doing my job where I'm able to make the woman look stunningly powerful was more important than churning out loads of money by doing a wholesale business or keeping on selling jewelry like a commodity. So I think I would say I downsized my entire unit. What I did was I definitely realized that I needed to have my own manufacturing unit, though it's not the right thing for a brand to do everything. With me, I did everything. I did my entire selling to the personalized approach. I did my manufacturing. I did my assorting myself. I did my PR. I did my publicity, my accounting. Everything was handled by me. And it's not good to handle everything. You need to know everything, but you need not have to handle everything. But I was forced to venture into manufacturing because my designs were leaked out. And much before I could even sell one or two pieces, the pieces were already sold in hundreds because the karigars would sell my designs much before they gave it to me. So because of which I have at present a team of 20 people. It's more of an atelier where I create designs, limited designs, not more than 200 designs in a year. That's the max that I can create. But I'm satisfied because I want to do my job well than just doing a job. And when it comes to my sales staff, I have two people assisting me, but then finally I am the one who interacts with the client because I position myself as an odontologist, and people come to me because of my service. So I have a team of 2 sales girls with me. Then I have a small team of back office staff, which comprises of 2 assorters, accountant. We have the quality check control. So in all, at present, I have a team of 40 people. And I think that's where I feel I belong, and that's what I am.
So when I went to your profile, and the first thing I saw was your collaboration with Audi and your brand. So can you tell us more about that? Like, how did you go about it, and like a little more about it?
Jewelry was always a commodity first, but now if you look, jewelry has become more of a style quotient also, because design has taken center stage. And with and I wanted that lifestyle projection. So it was very important for me to connect with people who share the same ethos. So when it came to Audi, I mean, Audi was always known for their TG is someone who is a connoisseur of style and designs, who gives a lot of weightage to design, and I felt that these ethos matched our brand ethos, and I felt it was a complete good collaboration, because we both got the best of best all together and projected it as a lifestyle, as well as we were able to exchange our target, our niche target audience, and it benefited both Audi as well as me in this collaboration. So it was more of a business collaboration with them.
Right. So when you talk about exclusivity of a brand, how do you portray it to your consumer without sounding too snobbish?
I always believe that in India, luxury needs to have a soul. Unlike the West, you need to intimidate people to be called a luxury brand. But I don't think it's so in India. In India, it's all about relationship building. It's all about projecting that it's a consumer who's bigger than the brand and not the brand. Because India is all on the sentiments, and you need to act more like a friend, a guide, and a philosopher when you interact with them on a one-to-one basis. And relationship management is a skill which you need to have when you are dealing with HNIs and the luxury segment.
So what do you think could be one common factor in all luxury brands, considering all the sectors? What would be the one thing you would tell
I,
us?
I, I would not say one. I would say that there are at least 5 to 6 things which are required to be in the luxury segment. I think that the first important thing is innovations. A luxury brand needs to come out with innovations, not just in the product, not just with novel product. It could be it could be with the service, it could be the way they are projecting to the new target audience, a contemporary. So the way they speak their language has to be in the now. It could be to their digital strategies. So that's my first key, would be innovation. My second would be definitely exclusivity with limited supply. Because if you see the thing everywhere, then it loses its charm and exclusivity. So definitely exclusivity with limited supply would be my second important point to be in the luxury segment. The third, I would say, so would be innovation, would be this. Personalization, because today it's very, very important to have the human touch. And personalization and specialization is the key when you want to be in the luxury segment. The fourth thing I would say would be customization. No longer are the days where where luxury brands could dictate that this is what we are and this is what we are going to present. The customer needs to feel that they are part of the process, of the creative process. Maybe it could be in small ways, in the ways of engraving. It could be in small ways of the color coordination, like when they want a particular type of stone when it comes to jewelry, or a particular type of handbag, or particular quality of material. So various ways, but there has to be customization for sure. And timelessness, very, very important. Model heirlooms is most important, because when you buy a luxury product, it needs to last you from 20 to 60 years of age and even further, and passed on to the next generation. So, and can't go out of fashion. So definitely timelessness. And last, which I think is very, very important, is inclusive. Brands cannot be exclusive anymore. Exclusivity to a certain extent with the product is fine, but not beyond that. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to talk about the brand story by involving various, present their values by having a lot of diversity, a lot of different demographics, cultures all together, and then present their entire brand story. So I think all these points are equally important with regards to luxury brand.
Right. I completely agree with you.
Right.
So I think we've all heard about people resorting to lab-grown diamonds. They want to go completely sustainable. They want to choose lab-grown diamonds over real diamonds. So what do you think will be the future of that? Would people undervalue diamonds, or will it be the same according to you?
No, I think that for a market to evolve, okay, similar, let me just give an example of pearls. So there was pearls and then they came cultured pearls. Now for two segments, okay, to be together, the difference need to be 1:10. So let me give you an example. So pearls are quoted at 100. A segment, when it is at 10 rupees, you can sell cultured pearl. That's when you actually start a market. Okay. When diamonds and lab grown diamonds came, so lab grown diamonds was always there used for industrial purposes. And when it came into the market, when the prices of diamonds increased, a lot of, mishandling happened with diamonds because lab grown diamonds was 70 to 100. So if diamonds were 100, lab grown diamonds was 70. And a lot of people started doing mixing in real diamonds and there was no transparency. And that's how we lost the lure of diamonds actually, because of the unethical means followed by some of the manufacturers or jewelers in India. And De Beers came into existence because the price at that point of time was 70. And I'm just giving a hypothetical example of 70 so that you understand it better. And De Beers says, we'll get it to 30, and we'll get it to 10, slowly by slowly. And at present, we have already reached 30 to 100. So if diamonds is valued at 100, lab grown is at 30. And I think that when we are at 10, I think they will coexist, because then there is going to be a strong differentiating factor. And by the time we'll already have the ways of checking the natural diamonds, so there won't be, and there'll be transparency in the business, similar to what happened in the pearl and the cultured pearl business.
So coming back to your brand, do you think it's important to sell an experience? Like if you're selling a piece of jewelry, is it important to also sell an experience behind it, like some kind of story behind it, so that could keep your customer intact?
I don't think it's about the story. Luxury brand is all about the entire experience, whether it is coming with your packaging, with your store, the way you present yourself, the way you service the client, the way you present your jewelry. It's all together. Everything works together. With my brand, besides this, you need to have a sweet spot. When I mean by sweet spot, I mean that today all cars are safe, but it's Volvo who's, when you want to feel safe, you go to Volvo, because that's how they marketed themselves. So in the same manner, with coming to Varuna, I marketed myself as I will be providing personalization when it comes to jewelry, acting like an adornologist, similar to what a fashion stylist does to a woman. It helps the woman to choose the right fashion that matches her style, her personality, her skin tone, her lifestyle. In the same manner, I present jewelry on the basis of what looks good on the face of the woman, her body structure, her personality, her psychology of style, through a personalized approach where it was all about glamorizing the woman to the ritual of adorning. And that's a service that I provided, which helped me to create a niche and specialized skill which no competitor could take it away from me. And that's very important, because India is all about form and function. You can't have a form without a function. So definitely it has to be an equal proportion of form and function. So this is what I feel, that definitely it is my brand. The service I provided was individual attention, and I believe that time is the biggest luxury.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would like to just add here, because I have been a personal customer of Miss Jani, and that's something that's very rare, where a designer actually comes and kind of allocates so much time to an individual customer. So I definitely feel that is very important because every jewelry or every piece of jewelry is not for everybody. It's kind of customized in its own way. Not every finger ring would suit every woman's hands or every man's hands, right? So I think that is really important for a brand to understand and for a designer to understand that, yeah, sometimes just spending a little time with the customer would just help them to, like provide that customized jewelry to them, and that service would kind of really go a long way. So yeah, definitely I would say out of my personal experience that that's really a very big value added thing for your brand. Definitely, for sure.
Oh, I don't remember you, but thank you very much. It's nice that you've experienced the brand also. So it's good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we have Arifa's question. Arifa, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am. So I wanted to know, because when you talk about personalization in jewelry, like for example, someone coming to you at your store, asking to create a piece of jewelry that matches their outfit or handbag or like a certain setting of stones or colors put together. So how long does it take for you to curate that one single piece for a customer? Like right from sourcing that material, like a particular gemstone or a diamond or a cut for that matter.
Okay. So let me tell you, the production cycle when it comes to factory made or mass production is 1 month. But when it comes to handcrafted jewelry, it's a 2-month cycle. But again, if it's something which is very finely crafted, it could go up to 3 months. So the whole process from the time the customer finalizes the design, I would say that 60 to 75 day cycle is a max that it would take to create a jewelry piece in India.
Okay, so would you like go out of the way to sort of source a particular stone or a metal for that matter? Like then would it increase the time? Or would you averagely say that it would take about 2 months?
So obviously, we are a designing house, so we are definitely open to taking, going along and customizing pieces according to the, what the client wishes. But of course, if he is going to ask me for a specific stone, if she's going to ask me for a specific stone or a specific, which is not available, obviously, and if I have to search, so that is something would depend, because some pieces, like, I still remember there was someone who wanted an Asher cut of a 20 carat. Now, Asher cut of a 20 carat was not available anywhere in the world. So we had to actually contact the Asher family and see to it that they actually create that Asher cut as per the specification of the client. Now, this is one of a kind things that keep on happening. Now, this would take me nearly 6 to 8 months. But overall, if you ask me, such specialized requests comes one-off in a year. It would not be something which would always be there. Regularly, whatever we are able to source, I would say max 3 months, we would be able to complete the order. Unless it's like the Asher cut, of course, that would depend. That could even go stretch from 6 months to a year. Never know.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So we have another question. Mithul, you can go ahead.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, so my question was, as you mentioned that, jewelry in India is still being sold as a commodity and, designed in the West. So ma'am, how did you exactly overcome that barrier? How did you cross that?
If you ask me, I have not yet overcome that battle. I'll tell you what happened is, for any segment to actually be born, you require huge marketing spends done by a single brand. And actually, we were in that stage when Nirav Modi had come into existence. And I still remember customers started coming in because they wanted to wear brands, and they wanted to wear branded jewelry. And that year, I think we made tremendous sales because I think that people were open to buying branded jewelry in India. But then after Nirav Modi's setback, people started losing trust in branded jewelry. And they felt that going to the jeweler, a known devil is better than an unknown. And they preferred going to their jeweler because they preferred going to companies which have been existing for the last 50, 80, 100 years rather than going to branded jewelry, because so that's one thing which I feel was a drawback. The second thing I feel is, whenever a market begins, like let me give it from an example. So in 1987, when I got married, I remember buying my sari from SP Zariwala, because that time designer brands had not come into existence. Everybody was, mono brands were, they were not able to exist because, when a category is not formed, people are not ready to pay a premium, and because you don't do quantity and you neither get premium, there's no business, because every business is either a turnover game or a profit game. And if you don't get a premium and you don't even get turnover, you're not able to exist. So mono brands in fashion industry were not able to exist. But when Insam, was the first multi-designer store, when they came into existence and all designers came, so their overheads were reduced and they were able to charge a premium of only 5%, which was acceptable to a value conscious market like India. When you begin a journey, because at point of time, it was more about educating clients and they were able to pay a premium of 5%, when you begin a category. We are not able to do that because we basically are selling designer jewelry at jeweler's price and we are not able to sustain. There's no sustainability retail module till now existing. In fact, if I did not have funds, I don't think I would exist also. It's just my passion and my limited funds that has allowed me to even float. So I think that because of which, now that I have reached this stage of my life, after 10, 11 years, I feel, where do I need to go now further? Because what is it that is going to keep me going and get meaning to my life? And I realized that the call of the hour was a retail incubation, where you get all multiple designers all under one roof. So their overheads are taken care of. They are able to charge a price where they earn, plus the client gets better value for money because there's no big huge overheads. So we are able to get a good enough net profit for the designer. We are able to create this. And with all this in mind, I think in the next 2 months, I'm launching my multi-designer store called Ruwani. Ruwani means soul. At a time when, people, the soul of designs have been lost, and I want to get back the soul. And Ruwani means soul. And Ruwani also because the name originated from Varuna, R-U, and Jani, A-N-I. And that's why it's R-U-A-N-I, Ruwani, and the soul. And it's going to be a place for, the positioning is, it's a place for marvelous things. And that's what we are going to launch very soon with a retail incubation.
Perfect.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, is there a particular market or a demand for vintage jewelry, considering the generation we are in, and is there a particular demand for that?
So obviously, definitely, we do have multiple personalities and multiple, there is no such thing as the demand will ever go for any product. I think once the product is made, there is a market. I believe in that. Only you need to find the right target audience to actually sell it and make money out of it. I think the journey is not about creating, the journey is about identifying who is the person who is going to buy the product that you have created. So yes, I do believe that there are some people who would still want vintage jewelry. So there are various personalities of women. Like in regards to fine jewelry, I believe that there are only 5 personalities we have. Again, with examples, we have an elegant personality who loves understated jewelry, does not want to shout. We have a personality which is I call it a vintemporary. It's a mix of vintage and contemporary, like a Katrina Kaif, who likes something which is classic with a twist, who likes some movement in the jewelry. Or then there's a personality like a contemporary woman who loves to follow global trends, and she feels that she's the one, for her style is more important than just status. And she likes to wear more trendy stuff. So that's a contemporary woman, like maybe a Deepika, I would put her, or even a Sonam, I would put them in this category. Then we have the trendsetter woman who likes to make a statement, wants to wear conversation piece, whether it's a day or night, like Varuna, or like a Sushmita Sen. So that styling is very different. And then we have a personality like the naturalist personality, which is someone like a Kiran Kher or a Shabana Azmi, which loves fusion India. jewelry, would loves to wear temple jewelry, loves to wear carved stones. So I believe that someone who's looking for this vintage jewelry and wants to add something to them would be the naturalist personality who would be more inclined towards buying this vintage and then trying to put their own personality into it and wearing it in a different way, maybe with buying some vintage temple jewelry and wearing it with their newly weaved Banarsi sari or whatever, or with their khadi, because they are the ones who love the earthy and the fusion in their way of dressing or in the way they buy the pieces. So I think that yes, definitely there is a market.
Right. So coming to the most asked question from our class is that what are the prerequisites one should look at while applying for a job or an internship in the jewelry sector?
So do they have the knowledge of jewelry, or they just want to get as a management student, right?
Yeah, as a management student.
I think the first most important thing is that you should have a passion for jewelry. Passion for jewelry is very important, because if you don't have the passion for jewelry, it's a very different sector. You need to have the passion, and you need to have the curiosity, that you need to have that curiosity of innovating new strategies to stay relevant with the changing times. You should be very you should be able to adapt to the changing time, because changes are happening very fast, I think, in every sector, but especially in the jewelry sector, it's really happening too fast. So definitely, I think that we definitely require curious mind and a passionate individual to actually come into the jewelry industry, for sure.
Right. Great knowing that. So that is from a student's point of view. So if I were to say from an employer's point of view, like if you were to hire a fresher or an experienced person, what would you keep in mind? What would you look for in that person
Passion,
while hiring?
because I don't hire anybody who doesn't have the passion. I love people who get passion and purpose before profit. So for me, that's very, very important. The second and the most important thing for me is attitude. I don't mind if they don't have that skills. They don't have the 100% skills. They have 90%. I'm okay with it. But attitude is something I can't change. So for me, attitude is very, very important when it comes to employing anybody.
Great. So before moving on, I think we should leave the floor open for any questions if any students have.
Oh my God, no questions. I've been so preachy. I've done all, or they are bored of me.
No, I think we've covered everything. One thing which I would like to ask Varuna is that how has the COVID scenario affected the jewelry market? Because it's been a very tough time for all the industries right now.
I think that it has affected, and especially, I think not just COVID, I think we have been affected with high-end purchase from the time demonetization set in. I think that we are struggling since the last 3 to 4 years, and is becoming difficult, because in India we still buy jewelry. One is for weddings and one to flaunt. But when there is no place to flaunt, why would we buy those expensive purchases? And at the same time, weddings where people are buying for their trousseau for sure, but they are like, if they would buy 3 to 4 sets, they have come down to 2. If they would buy a heavy neck piece of 50 lakhs, they have come to 25, 30 lakhs. Because they don't feel that in a crowd of 50 that they need to wear such an expensive or such an elaborate piece of jewelry. So definitely, COVID has affected our business in a big way.
Okay. Yes, Namita, you can go ahead.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Namrata.
My question is, like, a person is very passionate about jewelry and he has a design in his mind, but he's not good at sketching. So what the person can do to enhance their skills?
So this is a perfect example of me. I'm passionate. I conceptualize. I get finesse to the design. I get aesthetics. I do rough sketches. I don't even have the patience to do a whole design, but I do the rough sketch so that my paper design should be enough for me to make my set of designers understand what's running in my mind, you know. So you basically could work as a team. In fact, most of the designers, international designers, are not someone who are they're self-taught. They're not even someone who may know how to sketch. But yeah, you could learn the basic freehand drawing. So at least you are able to, explain to the designer what's running in your mind.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
So if anybody has any other questions, or we could move ahead. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Akshara, you can move ahead.
Yes. So I had a question, like if I were to start my own jewelry venture, what would I keep in mind while starting, or like what factors do I take into consideration while starting out?
First of all, you have to be passionate and curious. You have to keep, you have to do something which you are able to keep innovating, because today's generation gets bored very fast. So you need to keep on coming up with innovative designs. So you should have that curious mind where you're able to keep on churning out innovative designs. And you should be passionate about, because it's not going to be a very easy, it's going to be a little difficult journey. And you should be passionate enough to hold on to your dreams, for sure. And at the same time, I think that you should put your hands into learning a basic knowledge about assorting, so that you are not cheated in the process. You should know a little bit of, you should have a little bit knowledge 360 degrees about, because if you have to be an entrepreneur, you can't say that you don't have, you have to have a little knowledge about everything concerning jewelry, concerning your marketing strategies. So you should have knowledge about everything. So you could do the short-time courses and have, required knowledge, or read books. As such fantastic opportunities where you can now see the whole world in your one tab. So I think there's so much you can learn even by reading and gaining knowledge.
Do you recommend any courses to us?
For designing, or for what?
For designing.
So for designing, I like to go to people who sell designs at the same time teach, because then there's a good merger of theoretical design and practical design. So I would say Gautam Banerjee. I like to learn the skills of hand designs. I would go to Gautam Banerjee, but I would definitely go to NIFT also, because NIFT helps you in thinking, creating, conceptualizing. So those skills are also important. So I would do both. I would not just do one, for sure. So I would do a proper institute for 3 years, but along with that, I would also do a Gautam Banerjee to understand the marriage between the theoretical and the practical world.
Right. So post-COVID, all of us know how important going digital is. Do you think in this sector, you can go digital, considering you have you're selling precious stones and gems? Like that could be an option right now?
I don't think now. I don't know what the future holds, but I think at present, I think that, if you look at the digital world, jewelry below 25,000-30,000 is the ticket size that is sold. But anything which is above the purchase of 1 lakh and all is sold, but not that many. So I still feel that, when it comes to expensive purchase, you want to have the touch and the feel rather than just, unless someone comes up with an interesting manner of try and buy, where, no question asked, but I don't know who would take that daring step to do that. But otherwise, I don't see it, the high value purchase going digital for the next 5 years, for sure.
Okay. So we have Fuara's question. You can go ahead, Fuara.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I'm very happy that we had such a lovely session with you. What I wanted to ask is, we see international brands like Cartier and all, they are coming up with their Aura blockchain technology, where they are kind of getting very transparent with their customers and they are letting them know about everything. I know the international and the Indian market are completely different, but what do you think of this thing in the Indian sector? Like, are the customers interested to know what goes behind the making of a jewelry? Where is it sourced from? How sustainable procedures you probably take while doing it? What's your take on it? I just want to know.
If you ask me truthfully, Indians
Yes.
are only worried about how much they can save,
Beautiful they are looking. Oh,
how much they can save, and value for money. I think it is value for money is something which is inside us. You know, what is the value? More for less is what we are worried about. But yes, the millenniums are worried, are definitely the ones who are, going to be concerned about much more than the jewelry, much more what the company is doing besides jewelry. So whether it is to the sustainability, whether it is to the CSR moves, what they are doing, because it's such a expensive purchase. Why can't we satisfy our desire and fulfill someone's wish along the way? Why not? What difference it would make? So I think that yes, millenniums would be bothered, because I think that and at least for me as a brand, my product is about glamour, but my philosophy is about the upliftment of women, sisterhood. So I think this is something, but then this has to come from within. It cannot be forced upon marketing gimmick. It has to be who you are, which I told you. So I think that in future, definitely things are going to change, but at present, no, they're only worried about the best bargain that they can get in the market.
right, absolutely. And one more question. So in the sector of jewelry, people who wish to work in the management section or the marketing sector, do you think that they also need to possess some basic knowledge about the jewelry industry or jewelry? I mean, definitely jewelry industry, but I mean is jewelry designing, like sketching and the designing aspect basically.
No, I don't think that they need to have any skills on designing. That is something different. But yes, definitely when they're managing, they need to have, as I told you, that in jewelry, passion is very important, because honestly, in the jewelry sector, the payment is not very, we don't pay what do I say? The salary structure is very poor compared to the other industry. So the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you can climb up the ladder, by multitasking. But otherwise, you are going to be stagnant, and there would be someone else who will come with a lowest, who would remove you and take someone with a lower salary. I mean, we are more on that part because we definitely do not pay very high when it comes to our segment, even for designs or to a designer or to anybody in the management. Our pay structure is very poor.
Oh, thank you.
So
Varuna?
another question from
Yeah, there's another question.
from Advitya. You can go ahead.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for this
Good.
informative session.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask that as far as I understand the Indian jewelry market, there's a lot of trust which is involved with the local family jeweler. So how is it that these established organized brands are getting over that problem? And even when they are, these unorganized jewelers, they're also the backbone of this sector. So how can we overcome this problem and at the same time not overstep?
If you ask me, even Tanishq, when it originally came, coming from the Tatas, you see, the trust is something which is embedded in their soul. Even Tanishq was not able to be successful in the initial years, but it was only after, they came up with their checking of gold and the hallmark gold and all, that was a turning point. Again, if you look at brands which are coming up, are all coming up from legacy brands. Like if you look at Aura, it comes from Rosy Blue. Or if you look at a Kalyan Jeweler, if they have taken an extension, again, multi-brand. So I don't see anybody new except for a Nirav Modi who came in and took the market. But then again, because the way it positioned themselves and saw the gap and created the hype around the brand. And that's how, and of course, with a very, very well-crafted product. There was no doubt about it. I mean, the craftsmanship was par excellent in which Nirav Modi built his brand. So I do feel that the problem is that the goodwill and like even when it comes to multi-brands, there are a lot of people who have tried their hands on multi-brand, but they did not have the goodwill and the reputation, so there was no trust. And that is the reason I'm starting Ruhani, is because that 11 years of trust which I have built, and the goodwill which I have built can actually help the second, the future set of designers, because they are all under the wing of House of Varuna D. Jani. So it's very, very important that though we are having third-party certification, it's very funny that even though we are giving certificate from a third party, like an IGI, International Gemological Institute, but yet people still want that, the family legacy, because I don't understand why the integrity of designer is at stake always. And why it's a sure shot thing that if a grandfather was honest, the father is honest, the son has to be honest. I don't believe in this. Because character is something you develop on an individual level and not from just a family level. So I think that definitely, but it's very poor state, but this is how we Indians are, because we do have that. I don't blame them, because India is the only country which gives cash back and exchanges jewelry. But when it comes to international market, you buy a piece for what it is and there's no exchange, there is no buyback. So till the time this exists, I understand what people have a lot of barriers that are there which we need to cross one by one.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So before concluding the session, I would like to ask you if you have any tips or advices for us before we enter the real world.
So as I tell all my 3 children, I have 3 kids and they're all 35 years below, that the 2 things that I feel missing in today's generation is adaptability and perseverance, and they're the most important skills, because nothing comes instant in this world. There's no, only instant coffee is instant, or instant noodles, but there's no instant success ever. So perseverance is the most important quality that we need to have. We need to hold on and patiently keep on doing and start working with our actions and not thinking about the results. Outcome is never in your hands, but actions are always in your hands. The second thing is adaptability. Times are changing very fast and we need to keep adapting, because we need to be in the minds of the people, and we need to keep on adapting and changing our business strategies so that we are able to evolve, recreate our success year on year. So I think adaptability and perseverance are the 2 most important quality to ensure success in today's world.
Awesome. Thank you so
One
much.
small question I have, Varuna, for you is, what do you think about sustainability today, which has been talked about so much? How do you kind of put it in the sector, which is so luxury oriented?
Sustainability in India is only about the feel-good factor. It's just a feel-good factor and a marketing gimmick in India. I don't think that sustainability has reached the level. As I told you, the millenniums may be adopting it, because we have not reached a self-fulfillment stage in the Maslow's hierarchy as yet. Self-sustainability only comes when you reach that stage of life, self-fulfillment. And that is why I feel that the millenniums of the next generation who have got everything on their platter are the ones who can bring about changes. But at present, to me, sustainability, which is being used by the lab-grown diamonds, that the feel-good factor. Oh my God, we are not mining, it's not blood diamonds or whatever. But I think it's just a marketing gimmick at present and the feel-good factor. But maybe in future it would change for sure.
All right. Thank you so much, Varuna, for making time for us. And thank you so much for having such a session with all our students and removing time.
Thank you
so much,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Best of luck and success to each one of you all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
so
much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Keep growing, keep shining. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.